Hey, it's Ryan with Upfit Supply, and in this video we're going to be assembling and installing a Holman cabinet locker in our RAM ProMaster, so let's get started. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of bench work before we get into the vehicle. You can also do this on the floor with some cardboard underneath it. I'm doing it on a workbench so I can show you on video how to assemble this. If you're familiar with assembling Holman shelving, it's going to be very similar because a lot of the components look pretty similar, like these end panels and the shelves and so on. Those can be pretty familiar. Some basic hand tools are going to be required, mainly a screwdriver and I believe a 7/16 inch wrench. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing you want to do is locate your left end panel, and the way that you can tell the left from the right is the front side does not have this taper cut in it. So you're going to want the one that's the left side. It's going to have these flanges pointing inwards. We're going to start on this side of the shelf. Now this is your lower part of the shelf. You can see there's like a little lip. It looks a little bit different than the rest of the shelving. So this is for the bottom, and this rear lip actually faces towards the back of the shelf. So we're going to be mounting this in this orientation like this. We're going to go ahead and get started with some of our button head screws to attach these to the shelf. Now there are a couple of different screws in this kit. We have our traditional button head screws, which is just a Phillips head screw essentially. Then we have some one-way screws. So they've got that split head on the top, so you can only put them in, you can't take them out with a screwdriver. And then you're going to have some, I believe they call them SEM screws. They have these little washers kind of attached to them already. So for attaching these shelves and the normal shelves, we're just going to be using these traditional button head screws. For this bottom panel, we're coming in from outside, screwing towards the inside on both sides, which is a little different than a traditional shelf. Next, we're going to be mounting our shelves, and where you put these is completely up to you. One thing you do want to take into consideration is, I believe it's the 6th location from the bottom, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do not mount a shelf there because it's going to interfere with the door. So anywhere else other than that, I kind of have ours pre-marked out with a little grease pen. I put a dot where I want to put these. You have the option of mounting these so you have these little lips on the front and the back to hold contents in there, or you can mount them flush. If you're going to be putting in a cabinet or a drawer system or something like that, you can have it flush, but we aren't, so we're just going to have these all kind of with the cradle. And the front of the shelf has a welded in nut on the front, so that's what separates the front from the back. So we're going to go ahead and put these in now. You just kind of set them in here and you slide them into these little tabs in the end panels, and then you put one screw in the front. Now we're actually going to move on to the rear part of this. There is a weld nut built into the back flange on these side panels, so still the only hardware you need are these screws. So next we're going to take our right end panel and we're going to basically put it in place. And so you're going to kind of want to put it a little bit lower than the left end panel and slide it up so those lances all get in place. Okay. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and basically mimic the exact same hardware connection as the other side. Now we're going to flip this shelf on its face, front side, so we can put the rear panel on. There we go. Okay, placing this on, just a couple of quick notes. You kind of see there's these two bends in the sheet metal there. Those bends you want to be pointing towards the inside of the shelf. And then the top is going to have a large hole and a small hole like this, whereas the bottom just has a single elongated hole. And that's the orientation we're going to mount this in. So you can kind of use this as a guide to make sure that you're nice and square. It's like we're not by a little bit. And it looks good right there. Then I mentioned those SEM screws that have the little built-in lock washer, I guess, in them. You need 14 of them to attach this, so I believe it's 7 per side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll go ahead and put these in now. So in this next step, we're gonna be attaching the door, and you can open the door, or you can have the hinge on the left side or the right side, just depends on the configuration of your van. For us, we wanna mount it so it opens up to the left. And so we're gonna be laying this on the left-hand side, and we're gonna go ahead and get our door out of the box. This in location right here. Now, before we get this lined up, we want to go ahead and remove these screws that we had put in on the front side of the shelf so that we can basically put this back in place, put the screw through both of those holes. Like I said, we have lined up all of our holes here up against the left side of the shelf, and we are putting these screws that we removed from the shelf back in. Now for these remaining holes that line up on the shelf, we're actually going to be using those same button head screws along with our lock nuts to attach these. Now we've got two panels here to secure the top of this, or finish the top of this, if you will. You've got a little lip here. This is our main part that's going to go on top. This actually points towards the front. It's going to go like this. And then we're going to slide it in here through this gap in the sheet metal. We're going to have 6 locations that we're going to put screws in. And these are where we're going to be using those one-way screws. So this will be fun. And this last top panel here is actually going to slide in behind the flanges on the end panels, but then on top, back here. And we're gonna attach some screws from the inside, 2 from the inside in here, and then we're gonna use those same one-way screws for back here. Now that we have every panel attached and everything, we're gonna go through here and tighten everything up, kind of from top to bottom, make sure it's nice and square, plumb, and all of that. Then we'll move on to installing it in the van. So we lifted this into the van. This is a 2-person job. It's a heavy unit once it's fully assembled. And you wanna make sure that you're not warping the cabinet or scratching your floor or anything like that. So once it's kind of near it, I found that it helps to give it a nice bear hug and move it to where it needs to go. So basically the installation kit, there's a few different types of brackets. You've got these little angle brackets here. They've got these little slider locations, I guess. And then these are used with these 2 straps, if you will. So they attach to the side like this. These are your upper brackets. Then we have, in this kit, you get 1 mid-mount bracket. So you need 1 kind of mounted on the midpoint, 1 on the up point. Then you're going to attach it to the floor as well using some bolts and plus nuts. Now, in a high roof van, this is 60 inches high. This is a RAM ProMaster, by the way. We have kind of a cross member in the body of the van right at this point right here. So you can see we have a shelf in here already that has a bracket up here. So we're mounted into this top cross member, if you will. There's also one that's kind of this middle rail. So usually you're going to attach your mid brackets to that middle rail, and your top brackets to this top rail, and you're going to go right into the floor. So because we have a shelf right here, we actually get to tie in to these existing brackets and secure it to this shelf / bracket in the wall. So we don't have to worry about the left side at all because we're going to share these brackets. Now on the right side here, up towards the cab, we are going to do another bracket on the side, and then another bracket up top, just so you can see what that looks like, even though it might be a little bit overkill because this is such a narrow unit. So the first thing that we're going to do is kind of get this in place where we're going to have it. Then we're going to mark our locations where we need to put these brackets and drill some holes, plus nuts and all of that. One thing I will point out is we do have these liners installed on our wall. If it was fully exposed, it'd be a lot easier. You might be able to find some existing holes in those rails that you could expand and put a plus nut in. We're kind of dealing with a blind scenario, so we have to put a larger hole in the liner, then put our plus nut in. Now on the floor, you're also going to want to put in some larger holes. Maybe use a hole saw or something like that. This is a composite floor, So it does expand and contract with the weather, so we do want a little bit of tolerance there. We're gonna be using a hole saw to put about 1.25 inch hole in there. We're gonna be using these black spacers that are included in the kit so that the cabinet is actually sitting on the spacers, which is then touching the van floor. It's gonna be floating a little bit above our composite floor here, so that can still expand and contract with the weather and not cause any trip hazards or anything like that. So we're gonna go ahead and get this in place, make our marks. We're gonna put our brackets and need to drill our holes. Then we'll move it out of the way, do our drilling, put our plus nuts in, and then attach it to those locations. Okay, so I have all my locations marked. I'm just gonna move this out of the way again. So now that we have our holes drilled, we're gonna be putting in our plus nuts. They come with the plus nuts, but you need a tool. Holman has a tool that you can use to set these. It's just a little tool that you put on top of the plus nut, and you can actually use a wrench to get these tightened. Otherwise, you can use a tool like this. Also make an air tool. All right, I've got all of our plus nuts set. Now I'm gonna go through our floor mounting locations here. I'm actually gonna use 2 spacers per hole because in our particular setup, there's ribbing in the floor, and usually you use these to account for maybe one leg falls on a rib and the other doesn't, so you need to space it out. This is about 1/2 inch thick. And so these are both kind of in the valley of the rib, if you will. Plus I got a 1/2 inch floor that I have to clear, so I'm gonna use 2 of these to give me 1 inch of space. Same thing over here, so I'm gonna actually have to borrow these from another kit that I had left over, just so I can clear this floor. So I'm gonna be using a little punch here to try and center my spacer and my plus nut and my bottom hole down here because I'm a little bit blind. So next I'm gonna get alignment of these 2 end panels here. These are actually the same end panel. So I just want to line them up so I can get a hole to go through the side of this end panel through our shared bracket and make a hole in this end panel over here. So I just want to make sure that it's lined up in the same location. We have an existing hole right there we can go to in the side. Okay, so now this is nice and secure to 1, 2, 3 locations on the wall, plus our 4 bolts going into the floor, plus nuts, and it sits here nicely next to our 60-inch tall shelving unit on the left. And so that just about does it for the installation of this. Again, this is a RAM ProMaster. Installation is going to be pretty similar on other vans. Obviously, where you can mount it and things like that are going to be different from van to van. Now, if you're looking for this cabinet, shelving, partition, any other equipment to get your van ready for work, be sure to check us out at upfitsupply.com. Again, my name is Ryan, and have a good one.